In this video we're going to be covering NuHeat Radiant Floor Coil Mat System for under tile installation over lower level ground floor slab. And what we have right now, closets have been punched out, they've been designed, our tile sits inside. And the area that's looking to be heated here is across would be 12, from door to break wall here would be 14. So we have a 12 by 14 room area. The mat that we selected is 11.6 by 13.6. And what we've done is we've positioned the mat and favored towards the side of the entry door, which is where most of the cold would penetrate and from outside coming up and under. So we don't know what they did here 35 years ago when this was rehabbed. We don't know if there's insulating foam underneath the slab here. The odds are it's probably not. So the insulated coil mat will take the place of anything that's missing for an insulator at the end. Alright, so this is done in sections here. And the biggest thing that you need to know prior to is you have to locate your leads, which you'll see coming off of the end here. Now, interesting enough, this just coordinated so that there is a heating vent there. So what we will do at some point in time when this is put down, our probe or thermostat wire would actually come back this way. And you want to install that away from any heating location, only because this would give you an incorrect reading on the thermostat and things won't really work too well that way. So that'll be installed later on. For right now, what you need to know before you do anything with the mat itself is to lay it out into position. You know, the folds that you see here are how NuHeat sends it to you, and what that does is that'll flatten out as you progress with your install. There are test requirements that are required to be done before, during, and after the installation to make sure no wires are cut, damaged, or that the product hasn't failed before you do tile work. After you do your initial ohms testing, and that's just an ohms meter that conducts the current going through to make sure there are no breaks in the wire and that it's receiving proper flow of electricity. There is a safeguard as you're installing that you can buy right from NuHeat, and it's like a $20 item. And what that is an alarm. You can see 2 feeds are going in. Now this is a 240 volt system, so we're going to have 15 amps on one side, 15 amps on another side, but for all intent purposes here, we're trying to make sure that as we install, we don't have any error. And just to give you a quick idea how this works, right now it's hooked up, you turn the item on, you'll hear it make a noise, and then what happens is this will simulate a break in the system. If you pull out a wire, it'll start the beep, and that tells you cut a wire somewhere or there's damage somewhere in the product. And you can see right here, a little bit blurry, there's an open circuit light flashing. So we'll go ahead and reconnect that, and then we'll begin with the installation. Okay, before doing any mud or adhesive work, the chase coils that you see here will actually represent our feeds. And what we decided, since we have a vent over here, again, we'll put the thermostat down into this area. And then what we'll do is, after this is mortared in, we will run this up the wall and select the location for our source thermostat, which will probably be about a 4-foot area right in here, which is amply away from the heating vent. Not so much from its controller, but mainly for its thermostat. We're going to put the thermostat coil wire somewhere about 4 foot away, and that'll be mortared down. It'll be taped to the mat. You'll see that later. Before we get started on the mat for installation, you need to know you're using fortified mortar with acrylic. When you mix this, you want to mix this with a paddle. You can never mix this to the consistency that's required by hand. So you always have to paddle mix this. And what you're going to need here, if you look in the bucket, this has to actually be very loose. And the reason it needs to be loose is we're going to be embedding this into the mortar. So if you have something that's like thick paste mud, it's just not going to work for you. It has to have a consistency. It has to have like a pudding type motion to it, and you can see it. So that's a very loose mix. Now I'm going to let this mix sit for a couple more minutes. Then I'm going to check it. I'll probably add a little bit more water to it just to keep it so it's running loose. And then I'll show you as we install it where to go from there. Okay, here's what I can tell you. Don't put out as much thin set as what you can effectively cover. You have to remember that this concrete base floor is going to suck the moisture right out of this. So I do it in increments on a large room, and we'll go from there. You actually want to make sure as you press the mat, you want to use a rubber float, no metal edges on it, and we're going to use this to press this section of the mat into the floor. Okay, we're going to push our mat back to where it was originally. Put this down so you can see it. And if you'll see now, we're over top. We're going to put this section down first with the float. Now you'll see as soon as you start pressing the mat down, you'll see some of the moisture perking through the mat. You just want to keep pushing towards the direction of the end of your wall. And what you're trying to do is get as many air bubbles out as you can. You can very gingerly slide this. You don't want to damage anything. And again, that's what the little orange alarm is for, just in case you do pull something apart, or in case you damage something, cut something, whatever. Well worth the $20 that they give you for that. And you just want to keep pressing this through without damaging anything. Okay, you can see this first section is evidenced by the wetness coming through the mat. Alright, and then all we're going to do here, after everything's pressed down and we know that the mat is embedded into it, and you can see the water moisture coming through it, what you want to do is you want to peel back again. In this scenario, we're going to pick right up right there where we left off and finish this run out, and then this section of the floor would be done. Next section, as we talked about, you can see that's installed, and you have to remember, faster you work when you're doing it in sections, the better, because what happens is where you leave off here, it may end up starting to get very rigid, and may be difficult for you to press that back into it, because it's losing its moisture very quickly through the concrete. So we're going to go ahead and push this one out, and then we're going to start pressing and pushing this into the embedded floor. Now you can use your hand to get started, which will push forward. You're trying to get the bubbles out, that's all. And make sure your mat is as flat as possible. No lumps, no folds, no real big ripples that are going to affect anything that you do with your tile. And again, the biggest thing here that you have to remember is do not cut the wire braids. Be careful. You want to wear sneakers when you're on it, not work boots. Okay, we're now about a little bit more than 1/3 installed, not quite half. You can see the ripple down the center from this fold in the box. Still there because it's not installed. This one's gone, that's pressed out. This is what it should look like, pushed outward. Least amount of bubble, least amount of push. And then what you could do is when you're finished that section, if you want to go ahead and screed off your excess, always go out, away from the mat. This way there's no issue. You can't possibly damage it pushing away from the mat. There's no coil. That coil is right here. Just push off, get your mortar out. You don't want that to harden, because that's going to affect installing your tile later on. I'll do that all the way around. Back in the bucket. Same 1/3 still, and then once you're cleaned up, don't get too excited about, you know, little drop offs, stuff like that. You know, once you're done, you're still walking, you can sweep it right off. It's no big deal. If you miss one that happens to dry, that's again not the end of the world. You just, when you're dry, you just gingerly scrape it away. You'll see most of the loose ones just come off. So now, if you look this way, we have a nice smooth surface around its edge. You know, you don't have to be a neat freak about things. As long as the edge is all the way bonded down, all the way around, you'll be in great shape. We're not lacking or missing any mortar anywhere. And this is what you should have. So again, just want to make sure you keep the area flat after you scrape off your excess away from the mat. And then this way you can adhere your tile as you go without any complication. And you'll notice this doesn't raise the floor that big of a deal that you're going to have complicated issues doing the tile. You'll be able to gingerly run right off of this with your tile. Just keep in mind as you go here, you may not want to press this firmly down with the trowel, when you're putting your tile. But most installers are aware of that, and they know where to push a little bit more than they need to. Okay, this is the completed install of the mat, not the electrical, just the mat itself. This is how I prefer to do it, so I get a clean environment. Okay, and then you're going to start doing your tile right off the bat, because you'd like to get that wet bed on top of that as well, while they're still wet underneath of the mat. That's my preferred way of doing it. Some guys will let this dry out in full. Some guys will let it dry out in full and put a skim coat on top of it and let that dry out also as a base. Okay, if you check out their videos, you'll see a couple little variations in it as far as the install is concerned. But that takes care of the 12 by 14 room. Thanks for watching.